creature. The storm felled. The people here say the land has a memory, that it remembers the drought, the flood, and the blood that has soaked it. I never believed in those things. To me, the land was just that, land. A series of chores, debts, and promises. Something to be plowed, sown, and harvested. But since the storm of '97, I know they're wrong. The land doesn't just remember. Sometimes, it also swallows the secrets that fall from the sky and guards them with a patient grudge. I know that what I'm about to tell sounds like a lie, the ravings of an old farmer. I wish it were that simple. I wish I could blame the mezcal or a touch of sunstroke for the memory that is seared behind my eyelids. But my wife, Elena, saw it. And my sons, Miguel and Daniel, who were practically children then, helped dig the grave. Our secret isn't a memory. It's a scar that the four of us share, one that pulls and aches every time the sky turns gray. The afternoon before the storm they called the Devastator hit us, the world ran out of air. The air wouldn't move. It had grown dense, yellow, and heavy, like the broth of some sickness. My cows, instead of grazing scattered about, had huddled together by the old stone fence, motionless, their heads bowed as if in mourning. Not a single bird sang. It was a silence so deep it rang in your ears, a silence holding its breath, waiting for the blow. From the porch, I watched the clouds piling up over the mountain peaks. They weren't normal rain clouds. They were violet-colored bruises, swollen and sick. They looked like the belly of a dead animal. An indifferent, observing abyss staring down at us. In that moment, without knowing why, I felt a pure, primitive fear. The fear of a mouse that senses the hawk's shadow long before it sees it. When night fell, it brought hell with it. That wasn't a storm, it was an assault. The wind didn't howl. It roared with a guttural, furious voice, ripping tiles from the roof that shot into the darkness like clay plates. Elena prayed in a continuous whisper, her trembling fingers slipping over the beads of her rosary. My sons, sitting at the kitchen table, had their eyes fixed on the flickering light bulb, which threatened to abandon us to complete blackness. And then it happened. Amid the deafening roar, a different sound tore through the night. It wasn't thunder. Thunder rumbles, it makes the windows vibrate. This was a dull, wet, and final thud. A brutal impact, as if a giant had ripped a piece from the mountainside and dropped it on my property. The house shook to its foundations, the dishes smashed to the floor, and a momentary silence, almost more terrifying than the noise, settled in before the wind's fury returned with even greater force. The four of us looked at each other, the same pale question on our faces. No one dared to ask it. At dawn, the world was different. A timid, watery sun filtered through the broken clouds, illuminating a scene of devastation. I walked out with my heart in my throat. The cornfield was a mud pit of broken stalks. The chicken coop had vanished, leaving only a trail of splintered boards and wet feathers. But the real wound in my land was further out, in the pasture. Where the night before there had been a flat field, a muddy crater now gaped open, a navel of black, upturned earth about 20 meters wide. The air reeked of ozone, wet dirt, and something else, burnt flesh. I went down the slippery slope, my heart hammering in my throat. In the center of the crater lay something. A huge, dark lump covered in mud. I thought it was one of my best cows, dragged and mutilated by the storm. But as I got closer, my steps slowed. My farmer's mind, accustomed to the shapes and sizes of the known world, struggled to process what I was seeing. It was the size of a draft horse, no doubt, with a body of powerful muscles that were tensed even in death. It was covered in a dense, black coat, so dark it seemed to absorb the little morning light. But then I saw the wings. I nearly threw up. They were immense wings, membranous and featherless, like those of a bat magnified in a fever dream. Their texture was like old, cracked leather. One of them was bent unnaturally over the creature's back, broken by the impact. The other, majestic even in death, was spread out over the mud, its bony phalanges drawing an impossible geometry. From its right side, scorched and torn open, a thin wisp of smoke rose. The horrific wound suggested that the same bolt of lightning that had struck it from the sky had cooked it from the inside. I ran to the house, the air burning my lungs. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I made a frantic gesture with my hand. "Elena, boys, come on. Quick." Their reaction was a mirror of my own. A deathly silence, an incredulity that froze their features. We stood there, the four of us, on the edge of the crater, staring at this blasphemy against nature. The cold wind whistled around us, but we didn't feel it. We were statues of salt and fear. It was Miguel, my eldest, who broke the spell. His voice was a trembling, barely audible whisper. "Dad, it looks like a Pegasus, but one from hell. And that's the name that stuck. The Black Pegasus. The terror gave way to a practical, very human panic. What were we to do? Who could we call? The sheriff so he could lock us up for being crazy? The newspaper so they could turn our farm into a circus? I felt it in the marrow of my bones that this creature was not meant to be seen. It was a secret of the sky and the storm, and now, by a cruel twist of fate, it was ours. That same day, with a determination born of pure denial, we made a decision. Using the largest tarp we owned and the combined strength of myself and my teenage sons, we wrapped the body. It weighed a ton. Heaving it into the bed of the old pickup truck was a grotesque and exhausting task. We drove in silence up to the hills, to that barren patch of land on the edge of my property where only cactus and mesquite grow. We dug for hours without exchanging a word. Every shovelful of dirt felt like a desecration. We weren't burying an animal. We were committing a crime against reality, hiding proof that the world was much larger and stranger than we had ever wanted to imagine. There, with no witnesses but the mute sky, we buried our incredible and terrifying secret. The years that followed were a long, silent attempt to forget. Life, with its stubborn routine of planting and harvesting, helped to lay a veneer of normalcy over the memory. My sons grew up, became men. Miguel got married. Daniel went off to study in the city. The secret remained lodged between Elena and me, a present absence in our conversations. Sometimes, after a few too many drinks at a family party, I would try to tell my brothers about it. I described the horse with bat wings that a bolt of lightning had torn from the sky. They would look at me with that condescending smile reserved for drunks and madmen and clap me on the back. Their mockery convinced me to bury the memory even deeper. I almost succeeded. I almost convinced myself that it was a hallucination, a trick of the light and fear. Until the other night, just a year ago. Another storm, an almost exact copy of the one from '97. The same suffocating stillness, the same bruised sky, the same unleashed fury. My family and I huddled in the house, reliving a fear we thought was dormant. But this time something was different. Over the roar of the thunder and the curtain of water, we heard it. Nay, it wasn't the sound of a frightened horse. It was a scream, a lament filled with a rage and a pain that did not belong to this world. A sound that pierced the walls of the house, the din of the storm, and drove itself straight into our souls, paralyzing us. I don't know if it was courage or a suicidal curiosity, but something compelled me to go outside. I opened the door and the wind nearly tore me from my feet. The darkness was total, an ocean of water and noise. And then a bolt of lightning split the sky in two, illuminating the field with a ghostly white flash. And there on my land it stood, a dark silhouette, cut out against the momentary light. It was a horse, unmistakably. But on its back, like two banners of the night itself, rose two enormous, unfurled wings. It didn't move. It didn't try to fly. It just stood there, impassive as other lightning bolts struck around it, an impossible apparition in the midst of the fury. It was as if the storm were its throne. It was looking at me. I knew, with a certainty that chilled my blood, that it was looking right at me. I slammed the door and stumbled back into the house, trembling from head to toe. We spent the rest of the night awake, praying, listening to the wind and the distant cry that sometimes mingled with it. At dawn, when the sun began to dry the battered earth, it was gone. We ran, my sons, now grown men, and I, to the hills, to the place where we had dug so many years ago. My heart was pounding in my throat, racing out of control. What we found was worse than any nightmare. The grave was open. The earth had been disturbed from within. From the desecrated tomb, two deep, parallel furrows stretched out, as if something immensely heavy and powerful had dragged itself out of its own grave. The Black Pegasus was gone, and it had returned. And now, every time the sky darkens and threatens a storm, I no longer just see clouds. I see a veil. And I can't help but look up, scanning the flashes of lightning, wondering if tonight it will return to stand on my land and reclaim what is its. The fear is no longer a memory. It is as real and as constant as the earth beneath my feet. And I know, with a certainty that freezes my soul, that some secrets cannot be buried.